Hi, my name is Leslie Pagel, and welcome to Purpose Project. This is the place where we explore the many ways that purpose shows up in our lives and our work. In this episode, I am joined by Angie Nuttle. Angie is the founder of the VIP Center for Business Women. It's a space designed to help support and empower women in business. Angie shares how purpose has guided her through building a business. She shares the patterns that she sees in women who are searching for success and the critical mindset shifts that change the game. If you've ever felt that pull, that nudge towards something greater, this episode is for you. Let's take a listen. Angie, thank you for being on Purpose Project. I'm really looking forward to talking and exploring on how purpose shows up in the workplace.
Oh, that's one of my favorite topics. And I love that you're doing this. I've been watching some of your podcasts and you are just in your zone. You're in your element. I just love it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I do. I feel very much in my zone. Some days it feels uncomfortable, but for the most part, it feels really good. I feel alive doing this. I mean, you look at this. I was coming into your space here at the VIP Center for Women Leaders, Women?
It's VIP Center for Business Women.
Okay, VIP Center for Business Women, and you told me, yeah, go back to the circle room or pick where you want to go, and I came in here and read the sign.
Yes. Perhaps this is the moment for which you have been created.
Yes, and I was like, we are definitely recording here.
Yeah. This sign has gotten so much feedback from everyone who comes through here because one of the important aspects and themes about what we do is helping women to step into their calling and to help them to stop operating beneath what they were called to do. And so many women have come through these doors and they've asked that question, what am I supposed to be doing? And a lot of them, they'll look at that sign and like, oh, that's a confirmation that I'm in the right place.
Exactly. Yes. Well, I want to get into all of that.
Okay.
But before we go there, share a little bit about who Angie is personally and professionally.
Oh my Lord, big question. Lots of stuff attached to that. So I'm Angie Nuttle, and I am the founder of the VIP Center for Business Women. So one of the things that we do is we help women to grow in their faith and in business. And we do that through coaching, through community, through conferences, through connection. We do a lot of work helping women, entrepreneurial women who are trying to liven up their calling and step into the business world as an entrepreneur. So we do a lot of done-for-you services. So in order to do that, my background has been in that, just knowing how to stand up a business and how to do all the things, even the artistic and creative things. That's my jam. Designing things, branding things, websites, social media graphics, designing book covers, right? I mean, anything that's artsy like that and that has an association with business, that's what I do. But we also have a big faith-based women's community called Purple Life Community. So Purple Life is based on Lydia, seller of purple, who was a single woman back in the Bible times, and she was successful on her own and had a successful business selling purple and making purple fabrics.
Wow,
and
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so she really transcended time with having a business. She was wealthy, she was profitable, and she was also purposeful and instrumental in standing up Christianity in Europe. She was the first convert in Europe back at that time. So I was inspired by her, and that's a big part of who I am and my identity. So it's reflected in what we do here at the Business Center. On a more personal note, I'm a mom and I've got 2 grown children, and I have a 16-year-old at home. I love all of them so dearly, and I've got 4 grandchildren, which is just crazy to me that sometimes I feel like I'm still 25, at least in my spirit, but when I see the grandchildren and I hear Nana, Nana, I'm like, yeah, I'm that old. Happily married to Angie Nuttle, and I am a woman of faith, and that really comes from just going through a lot of suffering and hardships as I was growing up. And I would say that my story is pretty unusual compared to most people, and that's why I wasn't really afraid to step into this big vision that we have here at the VIP Center. I came from a life of a lot of difficulties, a lot of trials as a child. I had a stint in foster care. I was a runaway. I was like bottom of the barrel, like in terms of, I was just so rebellious as a kid because of things that were happening, and really did a lot of suffering. But it's because of those things, it made me very driven and very focused on doing something that matters. So there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. Well, I want to pull on that because this is all about purpose.
Yeah.
And a question that I ask everyone is, do you have a life purpose? And if so, what is it?
Yeah. And I will say that the life purpose, as you get older, it changes and it gets refined. You go through breakthroughs and you go through breakdowns, and you just go through all of the obstacles and the things. And it's like being clay and being shaped and molded into something very unique. And so I feel like at this point in my life, my purpose really centers around helping women to stop being in prison. Helping women to not only step out of the personal prisons that they've been put into, whether it's by their own doing, and their own self-doubts and self-deprecation and all of that, to even people in our culture and society putting parameters around them, and so they think that they can't move forward. I have a huge passion to show women that the prison door is actually open and you have a key. So you're just sitting in there, whether you realize it or not, you're sitting in that prison, and there is a whole nother life out here.
Right.
And I love helping women to realize that they have everything that they need. They're not missing anything, they're not lacking anything. They're actually very resourceful, creative, and whole. I have a challenge with people who say, "Oh, everybody's broken." That is not true. That's not the way we were made. We're not broken. We're creative, resourceful, and whole. And I'm on a mission to help women to realize that and fully step into that calling where they can impact the world in really significant and fulfilling ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it sounds like hearing about your struggle, you had the key, you unlocked the door, and you walked out, and you're helping to bring that to other women.
Yeah.
How did that light go off for you? How did you flip the switch and say, "Oh, I have a key. I'm gonna let myself out"?
That's happened over and over. I've gotten into different prisons. Sometimes it's a jail. Sometimes it's like a penitentiary where there's lots of ways. You got to get through lots of rooms to get out. I would say that has been an evolution in my life. So when I was 17 years old, and I was made an emancipated minor by the state of Indiana. And it was just because I had been in the system so much and kept running away from foster homes. I mean, and they were not good places to be. And some parents might bristle at this or think that this is odd, but really one of the best decisions I made was to actually step out on my own. And I hitchhiked from Indiana down to Alabama and started my life over. That was a major turning point in my life where I really became independent and broke free from all of the traumatic things that had happened back home. I wouldn't advise every 17-year-old to do that, but all of the junk had not been worked out of me. You can leave a situation, but the situation itself might still be sticking with you, and chances are that that's what's happening. And so I just went into a different season of my life and got into a very destructive marriage, and my husband loved drugs. I had 2 kids. He loved drugs more than us, and that was another turning point where I had to make the decision to walk away from that unhealthy situation, and realizing that I had the key. But ultimately, for me, the most major event that I experienced is when I got my undergraduate degree, and it was really a miracle. I was the first person in my family to graduate with a college degree, and I had survived quite a bit of trauma just walking through that. And I haven't talked about this in a long time. But I was very grateful. The first time that I had ever just really felt such a genuine, authentic gratefulness that I got through it, that I made it through. And every time I think about that, I think about the day I went to take my last final exam, and I was still married to my ex-husband. It was pouring down rain. I had on a pink sweatshirt and sweatpants, and I was getting ready to get in my car to go, and my husband, he did not want me to graduate. He did not want me to go and take that exam, and he took my keys and he threw them out in the front yard. It was pouring down rain. And I ran out there. I fell. I was covered in mud. I was sopping wet, but I found the keys. And so I grabbed the keys, got in the car, went. I was sobbing the whole way, went and took my exam, which I got an A on the exam, and I ended up getting my degree. It was such a pivotal moment for me, and so this heart of gratitude popped up in me that I had never felt before. So I went up to this little dead Baptist church where, everybody's like over 80. I'm like this 23-year-old. And I was like, I'm going to just go tell God I'm thankful, that I'm grateful that he got me through this. So I walk into this little church. I have no idea what the pastor was saying. This is what it sounded like. That's what he sounded like. But when this precious woman started playing this song, I Surrender All, and I started singing that song, and oh my gosh, I just busted out crying. I was just hysterically crying. And it was in that moment that I just had this experience with God. And a huge burden and weight was just lifted off of me. And it was the most miraculous experience. I've never quite had an experience like that since then. But in that moment, there was something in me that knew that I was going to be called to a different kind of life. And so I came out of there. When I walked out of there, I was a different human being. I mean, literally. For 3 weeks, I didn't talk. I was just so at peace. I had never been at such peace. I just didn't talk. Everything just looked brighter.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, my ex-husband, we were riding in the truck one day, and he says, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "What do you mean? There's nothing wrong with me." He says, "You usually have something to say. You usually are smarting off, having something to say." And he says, "You have not talked in 3 weeks." And I said, I just feel good. I'm grateful. I'm not worried about anything. And so it was just for 1 year. I had a beautiful honeymoon with God, and then after that, it all went to hell in a handbasket. And then more trials came. I look back at all of these trials and all of the sufferings and the different seasons, all the storms that happened. And I can look back at those now and see where, okay, you got out of this prison. Now you have to work your way out of this one and this one and this one. And it just made me stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that wasn't always just for my sake. It was for the women that I would serve going forward.
Yes.
And to present day. So all of that happened has been folded into what we have for the VIP Center. And VIP stands for Visions in Progress. And that's exactly what we are. But a lot of women, they don't see that. They're trapped. They limit themselves by what's in their bank account or what their family says about them, or the responsibilities that they think they have. And I'm here to help women to understand that you're not limited by that.
Right.
So
yeah, and your business is set up to fulfill your purpose. I mean, there's because that's not the case for everyone.
Right.
But for yours, it is directly in alignment with, I'm going to create a business that allows me to serve in the way that I'm being called to serve.
Yes. Yeah.
Was there a moment where the business side of it came to you, or how did that come to you?
So as I grew into my career, I was in corporate for over 20 years, and I got into human resources, and then another really instrumental experience in my life was going to Iraq. So I was in Iraq for 3 years in the defense industry. That was my niche. That was my space. And I knew that that's where I fit, while I was in corporate. And so with that, I just had a knack for doing things around organizational development, coaching. It was just a natural thing for me. And so like, oh, I know how to do this. Well, let me get the certification. So I did all the certifications. Okay. But I was actually doing that in the corporate world, and my company just kept moving me around to different places to do what I did. And it was an interesting thing that happened, because in 2010, my mom was very sick, and she had chronic myeloid leukemia, and we thought she was dying at that point. And so we made a detour on my corporate career. We were living in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was working for a defense organization. They were about to relocate me to Baltimore, Maryland. I was like, oh, I don't want to go there. Well, we thought my mom was dying, and really we felt a strong pull to come back to Indiana, because we felt like she wasn't going to last, and she needed help. She went into remission.
When you got here?
Yeah, within 6 months she went into remission. But so I had taken a job with a pharmacy diagnostics kind of organization, international organization. I worked for them for 2 years. That was not my jam. I already knew that I was making more money than I had in my entire life, but that was not satisfying me. It was not fulfilling me. And I recognized it's not about money for me. I have to be doing something that's meaningful. And so I just got a God memo that, hey, you need to go out on your own. You need to do this on your own. And so I'm like, okay. And I announced to my husband that, hey, this corporate career that I've had where I'm making buttloads of money, I'm going to stop that. But the awesome thing is I had about an 8-month runway. I knew that I was going to be getting a huge bonus. I had 8 months to get prepared. And so once I realized that was the direction I was going, I just changed my attention and started preparing for that. And I call that out because whenever you're trying to figure out what your purpose is and what your calling is, when you get the clues, you get these little clues, you start changing your focus on what what you're doing. Some people call this serendipity.
Okay.
I call it's just God's direction. But suddenly people start dropping into your life that were meant to fall in based on your purpose. It's really such a supernatural thing that happens. And that was happening for me before I ever left corporate. So I went along that path. I left that organization, started my company. First 30 days were kind of quiet, but after that, it just started building and building and building and building. So it was a very successful launch to the business. And I wasn't doing all of this at the VIP Center. I was focused on corporate clients. My platform is around executive influence and presence and strategy around communication and social agility. And I still do some of that to a degree. I just don't have to advertise it because they already know who I am and they just call me when they need me. But my business life really took off, and it was even more lucrative than my corporate career. But at the same time, I still felt like something was missing. I was making all kinds of money, and I was working harder than I had ever. Yes, I was working more hours. I was just working day and night, just trying to keep up with it all. And it was definitely a challenge. But we had this brand new big house that we just bought. We had all the things. But there was one day I was working corporate stuff and I was working from home, and I'm looking out the window, I'm looking at my crystal clear pool out there. I'm like, I'm going to go out there and just take a little break. So I go out there, I lay on the lawn chair. It's all sparkly, the pool, and it's all just a beautiful 76-degree day. And I'm like, I kind of fall asleep, I'm like, Lord, thank you. Thank you for giving all of it. We've made it. I just remember thinking all these random thoughts, and I kind of dozed off. But I clearly heard what I call this God memo, like, this isn't it. This isn't your purpose. To whom much is given, much is required. And I just sat straight up, right? I was like, was somebody talking to me? I laugh about it now, but I wasn't laughing then. But it disturbed me. Mm-hmm. It bothered me because I thought, well, I thought this is what I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
And so I journaled about it and, kind of let it fizzle off. That was like in August of 2017. Well, January 2018, I'm sitting on my couch in my jammies. There's beautiful snow out. All these little sparkly flakes. I'm looking in my giant California-sized windows. I'm just so happy as a lark, and I'm doing my strategic planning for 2018. Yeah, I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm here. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to go off after 2 more defense clients. And, I've already got these preconceived notions about what my purpose is going to be and how I'm going to, change the world in the corporate world, teach everybody how to influence each other. And I get this God memo, very quiet voice that says, I have a building for you. So I was like, yucky, I don't want that. I don't want that. And so I had written it on my journal, because I am a journaler. And so I wrote it on my journal, and I just kept writing, went to the next bit, and I was like trying to ignore that. I was like, okay, maybe that was a random thought. So I start rationalizing about it, and I'll just tell you, over the next few days, I just kept hearing that over and over. I have a building for you. And I found myself just arguing with God, saying, God, that means I don't want that overhead. I don't want all that. I'm happy. And God's like, to whom much is given, much is required. And so it took me a little while, but I finally just got on board with that. And then later in the spring, I officially started, okay, I'm going to see what this is about. I had no idea what it was going to be about. I had no idea that we would be what we are today. But as I went on the journey to find this building that God had for me, ideas started coming to me. It's like they just started flowing. Like, we have Airbnb rooms for female guests. And then I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a space where we could have our own events and we don't have to book, so I just all these ideas started coming through. And then we came to this building, wasn't for sale, and it had never been fully renovated. It was a hot mess. And I walked in here and I just felt like this building she was talking to me.
Yeah.
And she was representative of the women that I would be working with. And she felt broken down. She had felt neglected. And you look around and you could see that she absolutely was just a hot mess. So we bought her. There's a lot behind that story, but just to fast forward, so my husband and I, we took 9 months to do the renovations. We managed everything ourselves. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, and it's one of the hardest things my husband and I have done together. Mm-hmm. But we managed to get through it, and we opened August 23rd, 2019, and we've just been growing. I mean, we've just evolved and grown. And as a matter of fact, we're outgrowing this building.
Are you?
Yes. We've been doing conferences for the last 4 years, and this year for our Purple Life Conference for Christian women, we had to go to a different venue because we couldn't fit everybody in here. So we're growing.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
Thank you. I know this is a bunch of stuff, but it's so relevant to talking about purpose because I don't think many people wake up and say, oh, I've realized what my purpose is. It really is a discovery process.
Well, I hear so many things in your story. One is just being really in touch with God for you. For others, it might be the universe, your subconscious, whatever it is that speaks to you.
A voice inside that's talking to you.
Your gut, yes.
Or signs.
Yeah, but being really in touch with that and listening to it.
Yeah.
Surrendering to it.
Yeah.
And then also there's a lot of just saying, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And then doing it through the hardship because it wasn't always easy.
It was not.
But you did it anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's a trust factor, surrendering and trusting.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you say it that way, surrendering, because I would challenge that women do get nudges all the time. Well, men do too, I mean, anybody. You get nudges, you get subtle clues that you're supposed to go in a certain direction, or, there's a purpose for you here. And the thing about it is, I use purpose and calling together. They work together. But a lot of times calling doesn't look like we think it should. So sometimes we create a vision in our head about what that calling is, and our purpose feeds into it. And then we find out, oh, well, that wasn't really the calling after all. It was actually something else, and so just being in tune with that is very key, because we'll blow it off, or we'll say, I'll think about that later. I don't have time for that right now. And I see one of the biggest obstacles for women is the busyness spirit. Like, oh, I have so many things. I have so many things to do, and I've got to do this, and I'm responsible for that. And it really is a mirage to what your purpose actually is, and stepping into it.
Yeah.
And I like to help women wake up to that. A lot of times we keep lists in our heads. I mean, I'm a list person as it is, but we keep lists in our heads, and we need to purge that out so that the purpose can fit in there. Right.
Well, and as you were talking about the busyness spirit, is in so many ways that keeps us from the intuition that
Yeah.
comes, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we're so busy that we don't have those spaces to be out there by the pool, to hear,
Yeah.
to be looking out the window and hear, to be in
Yeah.
connection with the voice that speaks to us.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we do for our business members here is we do like a Thursday mindset coaching clinic. We were actually talking about this yesterday. And a lot of times we will allow ourselves to just be consumed with overwhelm and panic and anxiety, which that is all rooted in fear. That is a spirit of fear that is eating away at women. And I would say that is one of the biggest causes of their busyness, is that fear of not succeeding or not doing their best or whatever it is.
Being judged and
Exactly. And just not doing it all, right? And so they just create this big ball of fear and overwhelm that gets in their way. And so one of the things that I just challenged everybody to do, let's just take 2 minutes to just be still. Let's do that. And we did that experiment. I timed it for 2 minutes to let them just to be still. And then I asked them, how many of you, it took you a little bit to really just get still. And like everyone raised their hand. It's because they're not used to that. They're not practicing that in their lives. And in order to hear that voice or feel that nudge, you really have to be still.
You do. And that was probably the first 2 minutes in a long time that those women had, where it was an intentional 2 minutes to quiet the mind.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story. It's an incredible story. You work with a lot of women, and would love to shift gears a little bit and talk from your perspective of how purpose shows up for them as entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
They're coming to you because they're an entrepreneur or seeking to be an entrepreneur. And how does purpose show up for that woman?
Yeah, and really it's not just for our entrepreneurial women. We do have corporate women.
Okay.
We have women of faith from all walks of life that are trying to grab onto this concept of purpose. And so, if I start with the entrepreneurs, a lot of times they'll come in and they want to start a business, but they really don't know why.
Okay.
They
Do they know what?
Well, they think so. Usually, by the time they get to me, they have an idea of what they want to start, and so if a lot of them, they'll take it from the career that they just came out of. So they've made a living in the corporate world or the work world this way, but now they want to do it on their own, and they think that that's what they're supposed to do because that's how they spent all of their life. And as we get into the journey of helping them stand up their businesses, this never fails. We get halfway through standing everything up and they're like, I'm not sure this is the direction I need to be going. It's usually about halfway through they realize that they're supposed to be doing something else.
Why is that? Do you know?
I think it's because they've never really been given the opportunity to explore what the purpose is. And it could be that people have told them that they should go into business, and so they tend to really rely heavily on other people's feedback or what they know.
Okay.
And it's not to say that there's not a calling in that area, but when they think about purpose goes with you wherever you are and whatever you're doing. So purpose is not necessarily your business.
Right.
It's something deeper. It's something that's connected to to connecting more deeply with humanity.
Yeah.
And building relationship and authenticity with other people. It really is about the people aspect and connecting with them. And your purpose maybe for the day may be that you go and talk to somebody and encourage them when they're not seeing a way out of their situation. So just to give you an example, this year I have been studying Abigail out of the Bible. She was married to a modern day narcissist. He was a total jerk face. Here she is. She's in a time where, he was rich. She's the only woman in the Bible that says that she's beautiful and smart, wise, witty, had discernment. Mm-hmm. And so looking at her life, you think she has everything. She's got the money, she's got the looks, she's got the brains. But I guarantee she was absolutely miserable in that role, because back at that time they had arranged marriages. She was probably bought by this very wealthy man who was a jerk face. And so I imagine she's like sitting there just waiting for life to end because he's not a good person. Well, what she didn't realize, she was going through that suffering, but there came a day when her purpose and calling came to life. And that came through an unexpected way. Her husband had ticked off King David, this was before he became the big king of Israel, and David kind of lost his mind about it and told all of his 400 soldiers to strap on their swords and they were going to go kill everybody. Well, so one of the servants comes to Abigail and says, okay, we need you to do something. We need you to intervene because your husband is a jerk face and he's going to get us all killed. So Abigail, what does she do? She whips up like full provisions for 400 people. And she goes and she meets David. She falls on her face in total humility and says, don't pay attention to my husband. He's a fool. Forgive me. Here's your rations. We want to take care of you. And then she began to prophesy to him and tell him, you can't do this. You can't come and slaughter all these people because it will tarnish your rule and you'll always have blood on your hands. So you're about to be the king of Israel. And so she prophesied to him. Well, and then he confirmed that. He says, God sent you to me this day. So I tell you this story because she probably never expected that to be her purpose. She probably envisioned something else. And many women are like that today. They're looking at their circumstances, they're complaining about it, they're comparing themselves to other people. And, a lot of times they'll miss that purpose because they're not listening.
Right.
They're not being still and waiting for it to be brought about. And there are a lot of women entrepreneurs who come through the doors that they're looking in the wrong direction for their purpose. I know that's kind of conceptual and high level, and I could probably give you, here are the 5 steps that...
Well, I think it makes sense because, you started by saying they come with an idea of what, but not why.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining as they're going through this process, they're starting to explore a little bit more of the why and realizing, okay, I've got some freedom here.
Yeah, yeah. I just had a strategy session with somebody today that I've been working with for 6 months, and she is actually going into a ministry type business. And I felt like she was really struggling about what she was supposed to be doing. And it all came back to purpose. And I said, before we start, what is your purpose? And all these things that we have, all these things that you want to do. You want to publish a book. You want to get speaking gigs. You want to do this. What ultimately is the purpose?
Right.
And that was a game changer, to just ask that question. It seems so simple and unassuming, but it is such a powerful question. And a lot of women never get asked that question. And so I would say, I'm a facilitator of faith and purpose because I ask that question all the time.
Yay!
Yeah, so, and that's usually why halfway through their coaching engagement, oh, I realize I'm going the wrong way.
Well, and I have been asking that question a lot lately too for Purpose Project, and I have been told by multiple people of how helpful it is to have been asked so that they could stop and think about how they would answer
Yeah.
it. And the reality is, from my perspective, our society, we don't have conversations
Right.
about purpose. We're
Right.
talking about the weather, and that's part of what I'm starting to realize I think I'm being called to do is
Yeah.
make it more of a conversation that doesn't need to feel scary.
Right.
It doesn't need to feel like this big old thing. Your purpose today could be to open the door for someone, but it is something that is more a part of our everyday lives
Yeah.
because it brings meaning to
Yeah.
our life.
You know, just as you were saying that, opening the door for someone, I like to think of purpose in the sense of there are just these, I call them holy intersections, right? They're just these points in time when you're meant to be somewhere for a specific person, whether it be to prevent something or to facilitate something. And they just happen over the course of your life. And it's almost like there's a map out there for every single one of us. And we're moving along that map to hit these intersections. And sometimes we miss them. You know, a lot of times we miss them. I still miss them. Even I like to say that I'm in tune with my purpose and calling, but there are times when I miss it, and sometimes I do it on purpose because I'm like, I'm too tired right now, right? But those intersections matter to people. It's not just about you.
Right.
It's about the other person who is supposed to have that intersection with you.
Yeah.
And that's how I would look at purpose, like that big map of intersections.
Yes. I love that visual. Because the other thing it says is that sometimes you won't even know why you were meant to be there, but the other person would. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you could have no clue.
Right. But you were meant to be there for a reason.
Yeah.
That they took on. And it also says, the word that was going through my head as you were talking about the intersections is trust. Just trusting in that you are where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And not fighting it. There's so much deflection of responsibility. You know, it's on you to make me happy. My employer needs to make me happy. My family. And it's really, it's responsibility for ourselves.
Yes, yes.
For our purpose, for our happiness, and in trusting that it lives within us too. You talked about that as well.
Yeah. And I love that you're saying that because I think about how so many times we love people conditionally, or, you know, love is conditional. But a lot of times we feel like we should do things for people because it's the right thing to do versus we're really doing it out of a heart of love and gratitude. And when we're not operating that way, and we're doing it because we feel like we have to, then it steps outside of purpose.
Right.
It's no longer purpose.
Exactly.
At that point.
Yes.
So love is wrapped up in purpose. We've got spouses, and sometimes we want to throat punch them because they're not doing what they need to, or they're like throwing their boots on the kitchen counter or things like that. But you know, I used to be a person that I wanted everything reciprocated, right? If I'm showing you love, I want you to show me love back. I want you to, if I'm going to give to you, you better give back. And that was the wrong mindset to have. So going back to you saying, you've really got to manage these things within yourself.
Right.
And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it because I want to, and because there's love in my heart around that situation, or there's compassion in my heart around that situation. Not because if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That doesn't work in purpose. Purpose is very selfless.
Yeah. Well, and the you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You said it earlier. I'm supposed to do this, or I have to do these things because you've done them for me, as opposed to I'm doing these because I choose to do them.
Yeah.
Because it is who I am, and it's out of love.
Yeah. That's funny. I was smiling because whenever I coach people, I always remind them that they live in choice. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, right? I mean, if you're doing something, you're choosing to do that. And purpose is also a choice.
Right.
You can choose to do it, or you can choose to ignore it, but you're the one that lives with that at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yes. Love that. So, what advice do you have for women who are seeking to bring purpose into the workplace? What advice do you have for them?
So I would just say to women to remember that purpose it's probably not what you think it is. To allow yourself those times to be still, to hear when your purpose is to be activated. I would say that in the workplace, purpose, it's not always going to be like a huge bang. It might be something very subtle. It could be this little nudge that, hey, you need to walk by such and such's desk and say hello, right? I mean, it's just being in tune to that. I would also encourage women in the workplace, before you ever go into work every day, make sure that you are having time to just, I mean, I'm a woman of prayer, so I'm going to go to God. I'm going to say, God, I want to live your purpose today. Show me what that is, no matter how big or how small. Even if you're not a woman of faith, it's really just saying, okay, what's my direction today? I'm open to that direction, and I'm going to purposely shut down the busyness spirit that wants to cut all of that out, because the busyness spirit will crowd out every good thing in your life. And this sounds extreme, but you will go through life having so many regrets of not slowing down and focusing on the things that really matter.
Right. Yeah.
So I would say that that's just a few things.
What is your morning routine?
My morning routine is before I ever get out of bed, I'm usually awakened by thoughts. So I'm usually slaying those. I'm taking every thought captive right now. I grab a cup of coffee and I immediately sit down and just have that time of peace. And I try to have a few minutes of quiet just to see what I hear. I have a time of prayer. I've got a Bible app, and so I'm usually looking at scriptures and scenarios and just saying, God, what are you showing me today? I'll do a little bit of journaling. My morning starts out, I set the stage that way. And then when I get in my truck, it's like a second wave. I get in my truck to come to the building, and I'm tuning in. I'm usually listening to a devotional, something that's speaking life, because there's so much hate out there right now.
Right.
I really try to stay away from social media and all of the junk. That's hard because the scroll addiction is real, but I've also realized that is just such a time and a life suck.
Yeah.
So I purposely try to stay away from that. And I'm talking to God throughout the day, making decisions, but When I get in my truck going home, I'm usually right back at it. I'm filling myself up with things that are positive, good messages, might even be some worship songs. And yeah, so that's
Thanks
what I
for
do.
sharing that.
You're welcome.
Is there anything left unsaid on this topic of purpose and purpose
I feel
in the
like I've
workplace?
said every single word that could be.
I'm sure we could go on for
I
hours
know.
and days. I would love to.
I know. I know. I just want to encourage everybody, when you're thinking about your purpose, really realize that it's probably not what you think. Some people are looking for the big, major thing, when really it might even just be these small little things that push along. And so just my encouragement is to look for that and to listen for that and allow yourself to be still long enough to hear and see those things.
Thank you.
No,
Angie,
thank you.
you for being on Purpose Project.
Thank you. I'm so glad you invited me.
As I listened to Angie's story, one thing kept standing out, and that is the importance of listening to the nudge. We often get so caught up in the noise of business, expectations, and strategy that we forget to pause and listen. Angie talks about it as the busyness spirit. But that quiet voice, our intuition, is always there. It's guiding us. And the question is, are we paying attention to it? When we take the time to tune in, we're not just gaining clarity, we're aligning with our purpose. Purpose isn't something that we have to chase, it's something that we uncover when we create a space to listen. So, what is nudging you right now? And what would happen if you trusted it to lead you towards your purpose? Angie, thank you for being on the show, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. Purpose Project is brought to you for education and for entertainment purposes. This podcast is not intended to replace the advice that you would receive from a licensed therapist or doctor or any other qualified professional.